There are no suggested edits here, but there is a public comment to add a specific number of training/continuing education hours for food handlers to ensure food handlers continue to serve food according to the latest guidelines and standards. School nutrition programs require a minimum number of hours, so it seems natural to align the requirements of Title 15 for juveniles with the school nutrition program. Johnny?
I would like to see if the group can agree to add after food handlers and or serve safe. I know that's a very costly per employee certification, but if we were to have more serve safe across the agencies, we would have safer foods, more up to date knowledge. It's not just a take a test and I get to pass. This is a in-person or online extensive training. So I think everybody in this group, possibly who knows ServSafe, would appreciate that because it really supersedes the food handlers cards. It's every 5 years versus whatever the county 2 years, I believe it is. So it is costly, but it's worth the investment for the employees.
Great suggestion, Johnny. Thank you. Carrie?
I agree. And to put it in terms that maybe people who are not in the industry can understand. If you think about it, in McDonald's, high school kids can go get a food handler's card. They can answer the questions and pass the test. ServSafe is the next level up. And specifically, there is two different kinds of ServSafe. There's a ServSafe food handler and there's a ServSafe food manager. So it's both a higher standard. I personally, because it is a higher standard, I have everybody who's full-time staff that works in my kitchen is a ServSafe manager. My part-time staff are ServSafe food handlers. So I think it would be to even one up it is one person that's in the kitchen needs to have a ServSafe food manager and specify the manager certificate, because there are two different kinds of certificates when you talk about food handling with ServSafe. And to alleviate some costs too, I know just as an insider tip, I'm a certified instructor in Proctor. And so by doing that, the facilities can cut their funding, the cost of it, and save on their funding by being able to test their own people. So it makes it a more affordable, but it's well worth it, because then in ServSafe, it covers all that detailed information we just saw on the other page. It covers everything, and there won't be the, well, I didn't know. It takes that part out and makes it more accountable. So I'm completely with Johnny on that.
Thanks, Carrie. Helen?
Yeah, I agree with Johnny and Carrie too. I think that ServSafe certification, it's really good for all of our, whether they're food service workers or supervisor. I know for our adult facility, all of the supervising staff are ServSafe food manager certified, but all of our institutional cooks are ServSafe food handler certified. And same thing, I'm also an instructor in Proctor, so I do the classes, which save the facility a lot of money. I also make sure that our chief cooks are also instructor Proctor. We just recently got them all certified for that. So then they can also hold classes within their facility, understanding that with the different shifts and staff and so forth, sometimes it's very difficult to get everybody into one class. So you just have to be creative. And so if they're already certified, it's easier for them to give the class, even if it's just a couple of people.
Thanks, Helen. Okay, so I'm hearing from the comments that we do want to include and call out ServSafe specifically. Do you all have any suggestions on the language?
I just want to clarify, ServSafe is the provider, correct? That's the name of?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Helen?
We could leave most of the wording as is, where it's talking about the facility manager, setting up written policies and procedures, ensure staff, food handler receive ongoing training in safe food handling and techniques. And it says, including personal hygiene. And then after that, we can say, also, including personal hygiene and serve safe food handler certification.
Is it serve safe certification? And I believe there was mention or a recommendation that at least someone needs to have the manager, handler.
I think there is already a requirement that somebody has to have a, like a food manager certification that oversees the facility kitchen. I think that's already in place. Maybe not within this section of the Title 15 requirements. So generally, like, the food service manager or the chief cook or somebody in the kitchen is serve safe food manager certified. But this is more addressing the other staff.
Would it be accurate to say serve safe certification? Or is there another term?
Yeah, certification would be good. And I don't know if the group wants to put in there specifically in parentheses, food manager or food handler. That I'm okay either way, putting it in or leaving it out. I think I have no comments.
Johnny?
I don't know where the section is, but it's always on my inspection that they're looking for one who's on site at all times. I just can't find it. It might be Cal code only, and that's why it's not specific on Title 15 because it's mentioned Cal code here. But I'm not finding it. I already controlled F it to search, and I can't find where it states that one person shall have that certification. So it probably is the Cal code. So I don't know if the group agrees, but I think the inspector knows what they're looking for. So I would say let's leave this alone. It's already on our inspection reports from and it's already automatically because they follow Cal code. So I think and serve safe certification is perfect.
Thanks, Johnny. I'm curious, are there any youth who are responsible for handling food at facilities? And would they then need to also receive the same certification? Yes, Johnny.
So we don't have any youth at currently in a food program, but if we did have one, which we are looking into it, we would require them to have at least a food handler's card. But me, what was a recent discussion is I'm actually trying to get them serve safe certified before they even get into any kind of a culinary program. So yes, not allowed to touch food, anybody without the food handlers or the serve safe certification, whether youth or staff or yeah. So
That's great to hear. Thanks, Johnny. Carrie?
We've had a culinary class and a culinary and kids in the kitchen, and when they did, they had to have before they came into the kitchen, they had to have their serve safe food handler card, which they would gain in the culinary class. Now I see the question is, does that include the officers? Because the officers is as far as here in this institution, because officers are not in the kitchen handling food, but they do serve the trays, they all do get a food handler certificate. But they're not a serve safe because they don't tempt the food. They just take the tray from the cart and put it to the kids. So they still need the hygiene in that aspect. So they all have to have their food handler card, but it's not a serve safe one for them.
Thanks for answering that question in real time. With the food handler's card, however, are they aware of like what is an appropriate temperature versus an inappropriate temperature for a meal? Like, can they make that decision when they're handing it off to the youth? Yeah. Carrie?
Not unless they have a thermometer. If they all have thermometers, they would be able to, but unless they can take an internal thermometer, it's not an accurate temp. So we temp it before it leaves the kitchen. But we have in our setup is I realize there's other people that have far campuses from where the kitchen is. We're central with the campuses, so there's a very short delivery time. But if they needed to temp it, they would need thermometers. But that is a basic for every food handler card on what the temperature danger zone and what the proper serving temperatures are for even the basic food handler card. So everyone should be knowledgeable. They just need to have a thermometer.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Marguerite?
I want to be careful about this, the slope we're going down here, and then now requiring all officers to have a food handler's certification, because I think that's that's beyond, I think, what we need to do and should not be part of Title 15. You know, we have, because like the food that comes in for us, it's in a type of insulated tray, and each one is covered individually, so they're not actually touching the food. And I would hate to say, oh, officer so-and-so and so-and-so, you guys can't be, you know, go get trays because you don't have your food handlers. They go through enough training. And I would not want to have to start adding on more. So if we could just make sure that we don't start putting that part of Title 15. Leave it up to each individual facility if that's what they'd like to do.
Thanks, Marguerite. Johnny?
Yeah, our officers do not have that food handler's certification or handler's card. Like Marguerite said, that the officers are not handling the food per se, they're handling the tray, which they're not responsible for, you know, temping. They're just responsible for issuing out and certifying that the youth got that tray. So that's why we're able to get away from the officers, you know, being involved with the actual preparation. They're not preparing nothing. There's no hot and cold, you know, issues there. So yeah, that's why we don't have them. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thanks, Johnny. Okay, so as it's written right now, are there changes that we want to make to this text based on the previous comments? As I'm reading this, when I see food handler, I think of anyone who's handling the food. So then that would also include the officers who are handing off the trays, correct? No? I see some no's and some yeses. So maybe this is an area where we can just like tighten this up a little bit so we know exactly who would have to have the food handler's card and or ServSafe certification. Johnny?
So as it reads, it's actually correct. As long as you have a written policy and procedure of in depth of who's doing what, and that's what ours does have. And the line staff's role is receiving the food cart and handing out the tray to the youth. That's it. And they document, of course, but they're not. That's what my written policy and procedure is. And so I actually like it how it's read, because if we get too far into details here, because everybody should be doing something similar. They might be coming to the dining hall, and what happens is if they go to the dining hall, you know, kitchen staff serve the plate, but then the tray is given by sometimes the officers and the fork, and they're counted and so on. So I would rather leave this alone if possible, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it to a certain degree. It's been working. I don't know if if the group agrees with that. So.
Great, thank you. So then it should be a little bit more specific in that written policy that is at each facility. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right, if there are no other comments on this section and with the added text around ServSafe certification, it looks like we've also addressed the public comment. We can move forward to 1466. Oh, Shay.
Kylie, can we take a quick break for maybe about 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, so 10 minutes. I'll see y'all back at 2:40. All right. Here we are now at 1466. We have 2 more regulations to get through. This is really exciting, but I know we do want to be intentional with the process and make sure that we're talking through things. So I do want to express my thanks to everyone for, us having these really informative discussions. Okay. I think everyone is back. Actually, wait, Marguerite is usually on camera and Meredith is usually here as well. Okay, great.
I'm eating a snack.
Great. Is it string cheese? Hot Takis.
No, but it's an apple that the kids get.
Oh, nice. Nice. Lead by example, right, Marguerite? Okay. And I know Meredith is with us. Oh, okay. Just moving to her phone. All right. So let's go ahead and just take a look at 1466. This does not have any recommended language here, nor do we have any public comment, but we do have a recommendation from the SYTF subcommittee to include access to microwaves and kitchenettes. So based on that, as well as the text, the original text, are there any comments on this section?
I would just ask if someone checked to see if all those codes health and safety codes are still up to date. Because I don't know.
Good point, Marguerite. Thank you. Yeah, who typically works on these and kind of like fact checks that these are all up to date? Is that us as a work group? Amanda, I see your head nodding a little bit. All right.
We can check them after the fact, but normally what draws our attention if someone says that this is no longer the citation, thinking back to a prior group, it was like we updated the reference when it came to pregnant youth, I think that was brought to our attention or something like that. But I imagine it's something we can flag to just double check, if no one's had a chance to look at each of those, that's something we'll note for ourselves since we definitely want to check it before it goes to Office of Administrative Law.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, and then the comment made by the SYTF subcommittee, do folks have any suggestions or just any feelings as to whether or not to include it in this section here?
I just wanted to make a comment about the Cal code real quick. It was recently revised January 24. So I'll look into it if anybody else is, I'm not sure who does that normally, but it was recently revised. So thank you, Marguerite, for bringing that up.
Thanks, Johnny. And so similar to how Laura helped inform the DJA numbers, would you be willing to help just make sure that these are up to date, Johnny?
We're talking about all these codes, correct?
Yeah.
So are you talking about specifically for 1466 or as a whole for Article 9? Just so I know. I don't want to just assume.
Yeah, I was thinking 1466.
Okay, I'll take care of that and I'll send it to the, who would I send it to? Amanda or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
me.
Okay,
okay, thank you. Just because I know it references the health and safety codes quite often in the section, and then maybe we can just go back to the previous regulations and then we can, look up any inaccuracies there at a later time. But thank you, Johnny. Okay. Meredith, I don't know if you're back on with us here. But I did want to find a place maybe to look at some text where it talks about SYTF youth and their access to microwaves, or even just discuss the feasibility of including that in the regulation. I'm not sure how equipped facilities are to offer those to the youth on that track.
I was just gonna say, I'm not sure if you can hear me, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you,
Yeah,
Meredith.
okay, thank you. I was just gonna say, my hope is that the SYTF subcommittee is continuing to meet, and I think that they've done brainstorming at this point, but not actual drafting. So maybe this is something that we just sort of send back to them to be worked on in language. I mean, I think your like point about this being universally available in all the SYTF statewide. I don't know the answer to that question, but I do think that the subcommittee is in the best position to try to actually work on what language, like how that would look.
Thanks, Meredith. And just a quick follow-up to that, is SYTF still planning to have their own regulations to govern those facilities? And would it necessarily be reflected in the ones that we're revising right now? Do you happen to know?
This was discussed yesterday in the health and mental health work group, and what I heard was that that is still an open question. And so I think rather than this committee trying to bend over backwards to try to figure that out for this specific comment, that maybe we put it back to that committee to continue to work on.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Marguerite?
So just to clarify, you said something about wanting to put in regulations that secure SYT youth have access to a microwave?
Yeah, that was the comment made by, or that was a recommendation made by the SYTF subcommittee.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say that that's not something that's feasible for every facility. Again, it could be that you have, because what are they going to use the microwave for? What are they going to use these things for? And also, what if you have one kid in your entire facility? That's just your secure track. They're housed with the other detention youth. They're housed, they go to school with them, they program with them. How do you do that? How do you create a specific environment, to do that differently? So I don't think it's something that should be in regulations. Is it a best practice to create that? We are actually repurposing the unit and going to be putting a kitchenette on there. When you go through county stuff, it's going to take 1.5 years to get that thing done, just because of, the slowness of things. But we're lucky we can do that. We're very fortunate. Other counties are very fortunate that they have kitchen facilities on there. But again, it's not something for in Title 15 standards that we want to be able to put in there, when not everybody is going to have the capability of actually being in compliance with that.
Thanks for that, Marguerite. Okay, so Helen.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with what Marguerite just said, because it's very facility dependent. And also the access of microwave and kitchenettes, I'm not sure this would be the right section to even place that in. because this is basically talking about Cal Code and guidelines that need to be followed. So it's not really addressing any access to microwaves or kitchenettes for use. So it may, even if we wanted to, I'm not sure this is the right section to address it.
I think that's a really good point, and maybe it even, I'm no expert, but maybe there are aspects of what they're trying to get at that actually go into Title 24, which is more about the facility plant and our perspective only, so that we wouldn't have to think about, you know, modifying old buildings, but thinking about what an SYTF built into the future should include in its plant.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. Amanda, can we include a comment under those SYTF recommendations to maybe think about Title 24 as being a more appropriate place for that?
I will put the note in here, but just having knowledge of being at those meetings where the SYTF subcommittee reviewed Title 24, there was a similar recommendation for Title 24 as well. So that at some point will be presented to the ESC.
Oh, okay. Great. All right. Are there any other comments on this section here before we move forward? Okay. I think we're safe to move to the last one. Double checking that's the last one. Yeah. Okay. 1467, food serving and supervision. There are no edits here that we can see, no recommendations from SYTF, but there are some public comments. The first is to require food to be prepared and or served under immediate supervision of a staff member is not consistent with creating a home-like environment, so indicate that this requirement should not impede on creating a home-like environment. And secondly, add and have culinary certification for handling of food to the end of the first sentence. So thoughts on the comments and or the text? Marguerite?
I'm in a secure facility and I'm not going to have a kid use a knife unsupervised. The first thing that we have to worry about is safety and security. And we do have a kitchenettes on 2 of our units for our Coastal Valley Academy, and they're supervised. And we cannot sacrifice, I can't have a kid use a knife or anything else that could be used as a weapon and then hurt another kid or hurt a staff member. We have to remember where we are, and safety and security cannot be jeopardized. You can still have it as a home-like environment. A parent will cook alongside their kid and give them supervision. Supervision doesn't have to mean being a guard. And but we have staff that cook right along with the kids and are present. So I'm the public comment I don't agree with.
Thank you, Marguerite. Carrie?
I also agree with Marguerite. It's a security issue on possibly harming themselves, harming others, contaminating the food possibly. There's so many security issues with that. Also on the fact that it's a home environment, when they're in the kitchen cooking with us, it's not a home environment, it's a commercial kitchen and we're training them for a commercial food service job. That's not a home environment. We're training them for jobs. And so it's a completely different scenario. And we've worked with them and they're by us and we're not standing there like watching and we're working along with them. But safety is of utmost importance. And so I don't think that's conducive to the environment.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so it sounds like the response from the first public comment is that that would cause a major security issue. So then moving to the second comment to add that line about culinary certification for handling of food. We did discuss that previously in 1465, where we are now suggesting that all food handlers receive the ServSafe certification. So with this second public comment here, is it necessary to include the quoted text? I see head shakes. Okay, all right. Does anyone feel otherwise? Okay. So as it's written right now, that is the language that we accept as appropriate for this section under 1467. Okay. Well, if that is the case, we have reached the end of Article 9, and I will pass it now to Shave for public comment.
All right, Amanda, all right, I already got that up and running. So I'm just going to go over the public comment instructions once again, because we may have some new people that have joined us since this morning. The purpose of public comment is to seek input on decisions that are being made on this nutrition regulations. So keep your comments, please, focused on this work. And BSCC staff will not respond to these public comments. For Zoom attendees, when public comments are called for, click the raise hand in the Zoom webinar. If you're participating by phone, dial *9. A BSCC staff member will add you to the queue, and when it's your turn to speak, they will call your name and ask you to unmute your microphone. Your comments will be limited to 2 minutes, not repeating someone else's comments, please. A countdown timer will be displayed as a visual to aid commentators. Please be mindful of the time you have remaining on your comment. And as always, you may submit your comment in writing to regulations@bscc.ca.gov. Does anybody have any questions about public comment? Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have anyone available that would ready for public comment?
We don't have any public comment in the room, so anybody wishing to provide public comment can raise their hand on Zoom now.
We have no public comments at this time.
Well, Hyla, it looks like it's back to you.
All right. Okay, so as for next steps, the remaining subject matter expert work groups will continue to convene. We're actively working on finalizing and scheduling these work groups. Now, with the ESC meeting that's coming up, this will be ESC meeting number 4. Us ESC members will review the proposed revisions and approve them, modify, or reject them by vote. And the proposed revisions will be inclusive of recommendations received from these work groups, as well as the SYTF subcommittee and the public, which will then, once we do all that, we'll have final proposed revisions. Now, these final proposed revisions will then be sent to the BSCC board, and they will then have their own approval process where they will go through similarly a review and then accept or reject some of the revisions that are brought up, and then the direct staff will begin the OAL process. Okay. Well, I do want to say thank you all so much for those who are on this work group. It's been really a pleasure to learn about the different perspectives and just to really acknowledge all of the expertise that's really in this room. I think initially we had tried to avoid workshopping the language in real time, but just because there's such rich information and there's just so much nuance to what we want to do with the nutrition standards itself, it's really been helpful. And Amanda, thank you so much for making all those edits in real time. I understand it's not easy to keep up, but also have people watch you typing. So that can be very nerve-wracking. And then to the rest of the BSCC staff, I thank everyone here for all of your support and for asking and answering any questions that would help us and guide us on this work group process as well. And I do look forward to the results that come up from the other work groups, and then finally bringing it back to ESC. So thank you all so very much. And any questions that y'all may have, please reach out directly to BSCC at regulations@bscc.ca.gov. Okay, thank you, everyone.